quarter of a mile, at Wagoners Roundabout, take the second exit onto the Parkway, A312. Exit the roundabout onto the Parkway. Continue on the Parkway for 1 mile.
Opposition are not aggressive enough. They're not prepared to take this person to task. I wanted to see Starmer stand up at question time the other day, and Starmer should have resigned himself. He should have stood up and said, I'm going to do, Johnson, what you are not prepared to do. I'm going to resign. I won't be back in this house until you are out of it. And every other MP should have...
In a quarter of a mile, at Cranford Parkway interchange, take the second exit onto the M4 slip road to Heathrow Airport, M25.
Just to do his bidding. It is we're in a Chinese autocratic state. We're in this sort of Stockholm syndrome abusive relationship with Johnson and his cabinet. That's the situation we're in this country.
All right, yeah, thank you for that, Julian. Of course, it will not be Keir Starmer and the Labour Party who will bring him down. And some people said they thought Keir Starmer was brilliant in the comments this week. I thought it was another missed opportunity. Two stupid, bellowing chants of resign. What do you think the Prime Minister would say? Oh yeah, good idea, Keir, I'll resign then. Hadn't thought of that, I'll go. He should have used those questions as a so-say forensic lawyer to ask what he knew about that party, what he knew about the email from his principal private secretary, Martin Reynolds, which invited people to bring your own booze.
Exit the roundabout onto the slip road.
Did he know about the email? Because if he did...
In a quarter of a mile, merge onto M4.
His claim that he thought it was a work event. He could also have asked if it was a work event, why he went to it with his wife. Do people normally take their wives to a working event? No, unless they're on the payroll, and she isn't. So it'll be Tory MPs who will decide whether he goes, and Tory party members, and the next few days will be crucial. Tory MPs are back in their constituencies, and they may discover their party members do not want this to go on a minute longer. My own hunch, he goes on. He hangs on. He'll be there perhaps until the local elections, and if they're catastrophic, they may then get rid of him. But don't write him off. He's seen it all off before, but never anything this grave, never anything so bad. He has been a great political Houdini, but Houdini pushed his luck in the end, and he failed to escape. In fact, he died in one of his many stunts. Let's go to Robert, who's calling from Hereford. Hello, Robert.
Hello.
What do you think, Robert?
I'm a little bit upset by a lot of the words that are going on here about our Prime Minister.
Right.
I was a Labour supporter. I'm a Labour supporter all my life. My grandmother even said I'd drown any child that didn't vote Labour. But he's the first Prime Minister, the first person Conservative.
Now that's interesting, Robert. Why did you do that?
Well, because I want to go back to the Brexit.
No, okay.
That I wanted, and he did.
Right.
He delivered it. And along comes this COVID.
Yeah.
And in that, nobody in this country knew what that was going to be like. Nobody knew what we were going to face.
No, I agree with that.
Including him.
Yeah.
Now, he's got to run a country, he's got to keep this economy going,
Yeah.
he's got to protect his people,
Yeah.
and that's a job you and I would not like.
No, I
We
agree.
didn't want that responsibility, and he took it and took it on his shoulders and bore the brunt of all this, and he had all this country's weight about them. Now, we've got the people, it's split now right down the line of either like Brexit or not.
Yeah.
Labour or Conservative, it's gone right down.
Robert, I hear that, but this is about people in Downing Street imposing laws, and what we're then saying is, don't do as I do as I say.
That, and I don't disagree with you totally. Other than, have you been in the position where those people were making decisions and putting up with what they had to put up in government? Most of us were furloughed, or retired, or did our own thing. I lost two close school friends and a very close family friend. So I don't want that emotional blackmail here, because that's not fair to throw that at the Prime Minister.
But Robert, nurses and doctors worked around the clock 24/7, and they didn't have boozy parties in breach of the rules.
No. I'm sure they didn't. But I'm also sure some of them did.
All right.
And that my neighbours and other people have parties that weren't known and weren't brought up. And we're not dragging those people through the mud.
All right, Robert, just to pressure time, that's Robert. Very robust defence of Boris Johnson. Robust defence, cutting him some...
In a quarter of a mile, keep right to stay on M4.
24/7, they were working 18-hour days, and they were in a work bubble. But rules are rules, and I always thought they were far too draconian, and clearly, in number 10, they thought they were far too draconian because they regularly broke those rules. And I think it also suggests they thought some of the rules about social distancing and mixing inside...
Keep right to stay on M4.
Which is why they broke them again. But they didn't relax them for the rest of us, did they? What do you think? 0345 6060 973. Got a board full of calls, we'll get to those. We're also going to be talking about where next for Prince Andrew, because that statement from Buckingham Palace ruthlessly cutting him down to size, what followed was an indication that Prince Andrew fights on. And I don't think it's quite as straightforward as you might think. I'm Andrew Pierce, this is LBC. It's Friday evening, time is now 6:31. Headlines, Amelia Cox.
Downing Street is refusing to explain why it apologised to Buckingham Palace following reports of parties there the night before Prince Philip's funeral. England was under strict coronavirus rules at the time, and almost all indoor mixing was banned. The former director of the government's COVID task force says she's truly sorry for holding leaving drinks during lockdown. Kate Josephs held the event at the Cabinet Office in the run-up to Christmas 2020, when London was under Tier 3 rules. And the US woman charged with causing the death of Harry Dunn will no longer appear remotely at a court in London next week as scheduled. The Crown Prosecution Service says more time is needed to speak to Anne Sakoulas' legal team.
LBC Business Update.
With Direct Line Landlord Insurance. Come direct for landlord insurance.
New figures show the UK's economy pushed ahead of pre-pandemic levels for the first time in November. GDP rose by 0.9% during that month. LBC weather, some light rain in the far north tonight, otherwise clear, a low of -3 degrees.
LBC.
I'm David Lammy here on LBC. The Khan, the Mayor of London, is considering a plan to allow people between the ages of 18 to 24 carrying up to 3 bags of cannabis to avoid charges. And it begs the question about the decriminalisation of drugs. These trials are important, but they're decriminalisation through the back door, not through the front door. Join me, David Lammy, tomorrow from 4. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC.
30 million people around the world are just like me.
I value being able to
Easily build an investment portfolio.
I value knowing my investment firm
It's been recommended by which?
3 years in a row.
And I value knowing I'm with a company that's picked clients first for over 45 years.
Join the 30 million investors of
In a quarter of a mile, keep right to stay on M4.
That's exactly
What I was going to say.
Thank God. Value to investors. When investing, your capital is at risk.
Look forward to flying again as Singapore Airlines brings you Australasia. Explore Australia, New Zealand and beyond on board the world's...
Keep right to stay on M4.
Enjoy an unforgettable experience with incredible service and warm hospitality. Flying to Australia from just 690...
Continue on M4 for 4 miles.
Flexibility today at SingaporeAirlines.com. Singapore Airlines, a great way to fly. Date exclusions and terms apply.
The Vodafone Big Winter Sale is now on, with our best ever broadband price. Get superfast fibre for just £19 a month with 38 megabits per second average speeds. That's right, superfast fibre broadband for just £19 a month. Just one of the amazing offers in the Vodafone Big Winter Sale. Go online or in store today. Vodafone. Together we can.
CPI plus 3.9% increase each April. Offer ends 27th of January 2022. 24-month contract subject to credit check acceptance and availability. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
If you want to go big on winter savings, big on quality used cars, and big on bargains, there's only one place to go. Big Motoring World, with thousands of cars for you to choose from, all at low, low prices. We're big on what matters to you. Big Motoring World. Winter sale now on in Enfield, West Malling, and Bluebell Hill. Or at bigmotoringworld.co.uk.
Have you lost £3,000 or more in a scam or fraud? If you've been unable to recover your money, then contact us for a no-obligation chat and we could help you get your money back. CELsolicitors.co.uk specialise in confidential, no-win, no-fee, fraud and scam claims. Please don't suffer alone. Tell CEL. We listen, we care, we win.
Andrew Pierce on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Ordinarily, I suspect this story would be the one that would be dominating conversations in LBC today. The Queen freezing out Prince Andrew. You know that the Duke of York's been exiled from royal life. He's losing all his patronages, his military roles. He remains His Royal Highness, but he's been stripped of the right to use it. He will be just plain Prince Andrew, and made clear in that brutal statement from Buckingham Palace, just 2 paragraphs, when he fights on over the case involving Virginia Giuffre. He fights as a plain, ordinary citizen. Emily Andrews is a royal commentator and broadcaster, and she joins me now. Emily, you and I used to do the Royal Beat together many years ago. Even by the standards of the House of Windsor, this is brutal.
Yes, it is, but it's totally necessary, Andrew. I mean, I think there are...
In 2 miles, at junction 6, take the A355 exit to Slough Central.
Time ago. Of course, you know, innocent until proven guilty, and Prince Andrew has not faced a trial yet. He has not been found guilty of anything except that in the court of public opinion. But, you know, it was just getting too much. I think the Queen and the Palace have to act now, because when Judge Lewis Kaplan in New York said that dismissed Andrew's lawyers about trying to get off, effectively not have a trial on technicalities, and the trial's going to go ahead in essence settlement this autumn in New York, I think the Queen and Buckingham Palace and the institution as a whole didn't really have much choice, because this is the Platinum Jubilee year. It's supposed to be celebrating happy 70 years on the throne, and what to do with a problem like Prince Andrew when it starts dominating all the headlines instead of what Katie and a bake for the Queen's Jubilee? Well, you have to strip him, you have to de-royal him, you have to put as much distance and separation as you can between him and the House of Windsor, although obviously he's still a very, you know, loved member of the family, and as Richard Kay said today, still goes to see the Queen every day and she relies on him a lot.
And he still remains, though, doesn't he, Emily, 9th in line to the throne. He's still Prince Andrew. He still lives in Windsor Royal Lodge, not very far from Windsor Castle. He's still the Queen's son. So if this case does go to court, and I have grave doubts it will, he will still be referred to...
Do you not think?
No, I don't think it will. I'm going to talk to a lawyer about this shortly. But I still think that he will still be reported around the world as the Queen's son, Prince Andrew, a member of the British royal family.
Yes, indeed. I mean, the Queen can only control the machinery of Buckingham Palace, can only control so much. They can strip him of his titles, they can strip him of his patronages, they can make him put his HRH put it into a bank.
In a quarter of a mile, at junction 6, take the A355 exit to Slough Central.
Some of the reported on him for a number of years. We know that he will hate that. He certainly does like to stand upon his own pomp and circumstance. But you're right, absolutely, the headlines will still be Prince Andrew, son of the Queen, brother of Prince Charles, although it's
exit at junction 6.
Favourite son, etc., that narrative. So it will cause huge amounts of interest and period headlines around the world if it does go to trial.
In a quarter of a mile, at the roundabout, take the third exit onto Tuns Lane, A355.
And Charles Williams, yes, Andrew didn't want this, but I also read this as a way in which Andrew can now fight this case. I mean, if it is that he keeps claiming, you know, he's never met her, he's innocent, he wants to prove his innocence, the only way he can do that is by doing that at trial. I mean, we saw when he gave that interview to the BBC what a disastrous witness he is. So I think any lawyer would be slightly nervous about putting him on the stand a live testimony, but he's damned if he doesn't, damned if he doesn't, because if he reaches a settlement on the basis that he doesn't want to cause any more embarrassment and opprobrium on the royal institution, the court of public opinion will deem him guilty. But if he goes to trial, and no one should ever go to trial, I think every lawyer would try and warn you that trial is the worst possible option, then obviously it's up to a judge to decide who's telling the truth. And it's very difficult to prove a negative. It's very difficult to prove that you didn't meet someone, that you didn't sleep with someone, that you didn't rape, in this case, someone.
Very interesting. That's Emily Andrews, Royal Comment.
Exit the roundabout onto Tuns Lane.
Media lawyer at the law firm Howard Kennedy. Mark Stevens, good evening to you.
In a quarter of a mile, slight left towards Sippenham Lane.
Right on. My understanding was the last thing he can afford is to go into a witness box, whether it's by video link, with his whole life being gone through under, because the lawyers will call up emails and all sorts of things, that he's going to still try to find a way to stop this going to court. The latest being, she lives in Australia, she's not in the United States, he's not in the United States, therefore there should be no court case.
Yeah, I mean, look, any lawyer, as Emily said, would be a moron in a hurry to put Prince Andrew in the box. I mean,
slight left towards Sippenham Lane.
On every level. But, you know, I think he has absolutely zero options. So, until now, the royal family...
Continue for 1.5 miles.
The fact that he has declared his innocence and allowed him to conduct this case pretty much as he's been advised. But as soon as this particular application came forward in court, public sentiment changed. And the suggestion that at the same time that he had never met Virginia Joffrey, and of course every time he said that we see the picture, and the suggestion that if he had met her, which he denied, then his friend the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein had bought her off many years ago for $500,000. That offended the nostrils of every right-thinking person. And that particular part has acted as the catalyst which has asked further questions. So in the last weeks, the questions came up about whether he should retain his princely titles, whether he should retain the associations with charities and other good works operations, whether he should continue to be the honorary colonel-in-chief of the Grenadier Guards and the Irish Regiment, which of course are in the Queen's personal gift. And also there was conjecture as to whether, and I think it was wrong, there was conjecture that she was paid for his defence. And I think that caused great offence. And that sort of emerged on social media. But once the judgment came out, people were so appalled that actually all of this crossed into the mainstream. So what he's done is reputationally tarnish the three major figures at the centre of the crowd. So the following morning there was an emergency meeting at Windsor, and effectively he had to hand back all his titles and everything else. As we know, he's essentially been put out to pasture, if you like, metaphorically bolted in a cold and drafty attic at Balmoral, never to see the light of day again.
Yes.
So the issue now is he has a very narrow window, and a lot of folk haven't realised this. So all of his rather sterile but proper legal points were essentially that he didn't have to appear before the court in New York. So he hasn't recognised Judge Lewis Kaplan as being competent, as a matter of law, to adjudicate on the substance of this case. Did or did he not know about Virginia Joffrey being trafficked to him? And as a consequence of that, the judge has seen through that. It's obviously irritated him. And what he's done is he's found against him, and he said, basically, stop, and he was explicit about this in court, he said, stop dealing with this unmeritorious stuff and get to the substance. And he knows, the judge, as do all the lawyers, that in doing so, Prince Andrew is going to be forced to choose. So Prince Andrew has 14 days to appeal this decision from the date of the decision, but he also has the same period of time to decide whether or not to allow Judge Lewis Kaplan to consider the merits of the case. Now, this is important, and I hope you're still with me.
Yeah.
But this is important because under a quirk of law, which applies to everybody, if you allow a default judgment, that is, Prince Andrew doesn't turn up to defend himself, and she wins by kicking an open goal, essentially she will be entitled to vindication, and the court will make an award of many millions of damages. But by quirk of law, if you haven't accepted the jurisdiction of the New York court, that money judgment is not enforceable in the UK. So he has to decide within the next 14 days whether he's going to default or fight. And for the reasons that Emily pointed out, if he fights, then essentially this year is going to be taken up. The Queen's Platinum Jubilee will be taken up with, at the times of all the